Yeah, and we don't know yet. There's no positive identification of these 8 bodies. And looking at the crash site, these bodies would be quite hard to identify because they'll all be mangled up and burned. The Wagner channels have been saying in the last hour, this is their own Telegram channels, have been saying that they are confirming that Prigozhin is dead, along with Dmitry Utkin, who was the deputy, or was the co-founder of Wagner in 2014. Now, that's what some Wagner people are saying, but it's plausible. But it won't be confirmed for quite some time. But this is undoubtedly big news because whatever it does to the war in Ukraine, and in a way the effect on the war will probably be marginal, but it reinforces the fact that Russia is a gangster state. It's run in a gangster way from the top right through to the very bottom, with corruption down at the lowest possible level. And of course, most people are saying in the West, well, if Prigozhin's dead, this has only been a matter of time. He's been a dead man walking since the 24th of June, when this attempted coup seems to have been tried, the march from Rostov on Moscow. And it makes President Putin look very weak, the fact that Prigozhin not only got away with it, but was then transiting between Belarus and Moscow, and he was going back to Moscow. He had a meeting with Putin on the 29th of June, along with 35 of the Wagner rebels, and Putin didn't even get what he wanted at that meeting. So Putin has looked very, very weak. Also, I mean, one learns in these sorts of news times, these immediate events, to be a little bit careful, because many more things come out in the next 24 hours afterwards. Lots of complications, lots of other angles seem to crop up. So we do have to be a little bit careful. But it's not obvious that he's dead at the moment. He probably is, but there's still some plausible idea that this might have been some sort of setup. It's certainly not obvious that Mr. Putin may have had to be behind it. There's any number of people in Moscow among the elite who wanted him dead. There's been rumours for a long time that Timchenko, for instance, Gennady Timchenko, has had a contract out on him for well over a year. That may or may not be true, but these rumours swirl around. Prigozhin only had one friend, really, among the elite, and that was Udoy, a man who was the governor of Tula, who seemed to get on with him, as well as Shoigu, the defense minister. But I mean, everybody else in Moscow, all of the elite, all of the people close to Putin, detested Prigozhin and thought he was very dangerous. So in that respect, this is not surprising, but lots of detail, I'm sure, other detail, confusing detail, will emerge in the next 24, 48 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, as you say, the devil is in the detail. And for viewers joining us now, we are reporting that there has been a plane crash north of Moscow. These pictures coming into us here at Sky News of that plane tumbling down through the skies over Moscow. And we also brought you the pictures of that crash site. Interestingly, Moscow correspondent Diana Magnay, saying that there was also reports of a second plane right behind that one, zigzagging its way through the skies behind it. So there is a lot of intrigue tonight around the plane crash, the nature of this plane crash, whether or not indeed Yevgeny Prigozhin was on board. And of course, President Putin tonight at that concert marking the victory in Kursk, seemingly going about his business as though nothing has really happened.
Yes, I mean, he's in Kursk to mark the great Second World War tank battle of Kursk, the victory at Kursk, which is part of the Russian national picture, as it were, of the Great Patriotic War. And the aircraft footage is quite interesting. Yeah, reports of the 2 aircraft are in the air. Early reports, they were both Prigozhin's aircraft, and the second one turned back to Moscow after the incident. That may or may not turn out to be true. Lots of speculation that one aircraft may have shot down another aircraft. There's a little bit of supporting evidence for that when we see that the piece of film that we're running now of the aircraft falling out of the sky. I mean, when an aircraft blows up in midair, it doesn't fall out of the sky in a coherent way. It just breaks up and bits fall out of the sky. In this case, when you see the aircraft coming down, it's sort of leafing down. It's like sycamore leafing down, as if it's been hit or some sort of catastrophic failure has taken place in its command system, in its flying controls. So it doesn't, to me, look like an aircraft that had a bomb on board, but it does look like an aircraft that has been hit by something outside, which does enough damage to wreck the control surfaces, and so the aircraft goes into a death dive that the pilots can't do anything about. When you see the way the aircraft comes down, it has that look about it, but I'm only guessing from what we see on the clips that we've been running.
Yeah, and the truth is, Michael, that we may or may not ever get an investigation, because all of this will be in Russia's hands on what information is released. But this certainly reminiscent. I was speaking earlier to Michael Bosicue, who was the OSC spokesperson and senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, who gained access to the crash site of MH17. And we know about Russia's hand behind that too. Let's talk a little, Michael, about President Putin's playbook, so to speak. We know that how he deals with adversaries. He deals with them swiftly and ruthlessly, no matter where they are. Of course, we know about the poisoning of Alexander Litvinenko, Sergei Skripal, and Boris Bondarev saying to me that this is a far more brutal way of dealing with somebody, if indeed President Putin is behind this. But we have seen MH17 crash too. Yes,
I mean, the MH17 crash was created by a Buk missile, a Buk anti-aircraft missile, that was under the control of Gherkin, the man who Strelkov, his real name is, but he called himself Alexander Gherkin, who's now been arrested, incidentally. Nothing to do with this. He was just been arrested for being anti-Kremlin because he's such a Russian nationalist. But the MH17 aircraft was brought down by a missile fired by the separatists in the Donetsk region in 2014, I think it was, wasn't it? And then the other poisonings, Litvinenko and Skripal, and a number of other poisonings around the world and people falling out of windows, is generally attributed to the GRU, which is the military intelligence arm. And the GRU have been, as we're going through their own assassination list for a number of years, and our own intelligence people have said that they know that Putin has, as it were, approved this list. He may not have given orders for any particular assassination, but he certainly approved the fact that the GRU go around the world doing all of this.